Thank you, everyone. My name is Pavlovski. I'm the CEO and founder of Rumble. For those that don't know what Rumble is a video platform that democratizes the monetization and distribution for social video creators. I'm super excited to have a panel that I have here today from, I guess, Canada. We're a little outnumbered, 2 Canadians, 3 Americans, but that's okay. These are incredible entrepreneurs that I'm going to have the opportunity to ask some really provoking questions to. So the format that I have here is that it's going to kind of be an open Q&A. I'm going to ask a lot of questions to each of the panelists. And after that, if I miss something, hopefully someone from the crowd will pick that up. But I'll start off with a little introduction for each panelist, and then we'll jump into the questions. So to my left, we have Brian Warner. He's the founder of Celebrity Net Worth. He founded the company back in 2010, and it's become the largest celebrity finance website in the world. Pretty much every single person in this room has searched the net worth of Drake or whoever it may be, and you've landed on his website. So they reach over 12 million unique visitors a month. Both Brian and the website are frequently referenced by major news organizations like CNN, New York Times, the Business Insider, and the BBC. Prior to Celebrity Net Worth, he was an executive manager at Break.com, which is another large men's entertainment website. To the left of Brian, is Scott Delong. Scott is a serial entrepreneur from Canton, Ohio. One of his first ventures was Godvine.com. It was the largest Christian video site, which he sold back in 2012 to Salem Communications. After Godvine, Scott started another website called Viral Nova, which became one of the world's largest viral and social publishing websites. And he also sold that just over the summer to Zealot Networks in California. Only a month ago, though, Scott was named as the 41st most influential tech person in New York by Business Insider, sitting on a list among CEOs like Tim Armstrong, James Murdoch, Mike Bloomberg, and even Verizon's Lal McCat. To the left of Scott, we have Jason Burfield. Jason Burfield is the CTO of LittleThings, the leading lifestyle destination for inspiring and uplifting and engaging stories. Experiencing explosive growth, LittleThings has become the 3rd largest Facebook publisher on the planet, 4th largest mobile site in the United States, 7th ranked lifestyle site, and the 74th largest website in the US, with a 17% reach of the total digital population. Burfield leads all technical initiatives, supporting upwards of 90,000 concurrent users viewing more than 20,000 pieces of content every second. Prior to LittleThings, Burfield was the CTO of Dr. Oz-founded ubeauty.com, where he built out the technology as well as the engineering team. Ubeauty scaled over to 1.1 million registered users before being acquired, and he also has a deep entrepreneurial background, having founded several companies including PhotoShelter, SportsShooter, and altpic.com. And to the left of Jason, and to your right, is John Bitove. So John is a Canadian entrepreneur from Toronto with an extremely impressive portfolio as well. Some of his ventures include in Canada that he's founded and been a part of is SiriusXM Canada, Obelysk, Key REIT, the founding of the Air Canada Centre, and he's also responsible for bringing Canada's first NBA franchise to Canada, the Toronto Raptors. But in addition to all of his ventures, John is one other thing that's really worth noting about John is his involvement in Macedonia 2025, which he co-founded with Mike Zafarowski. I was introduced to the organization back in 2010 by John, and I'm super proud and excited to be part of this organization, as I'm sure everyone else here being part of this event is as well. Since I joined the organization, both John, Mike, and Macedonia 2025 have inspired so many young entrepreneurs, including myself, to succeed in today's world. So without further ado, I would like to welcome John with a rounding applause.
Thank you, Chris. And right back at you, because we are super proud of you, and not only what you're doing at your age, but the fact that you brought jobs back to Macedonia and are employing, tens of dozens of kids. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us. And I'm just trying to figure out why you have me up here with all these kids, because what they do is way more fun for this crowd.
All right. So I'm just gonna, start it off and just kind of dive into questions. And we'll start off with Brian. A site like Celebrity Net Worth, I've run into it so many times. How did you even come up with an idea like that?
Well, it was basically a natural thing because it was something that I wanted to exist, and this was in roughly 2009, 2010. I had been searching for that kind of content, and I didn't see that any sort of quality site existed answering the kind of questions that I was looking for. So sort of stuck in the back of my head, and I kept thinking about it. And at the time I was, as you said, working for a large website. So I had all the skills already to create a site, I just didn't have the idea. So when it became clear that this was something that, didn't seem to exist in the world, like you have Forbes, which covers billionaires very well, but there wasn't a lot of information about regular celebrities, or just people who weren't billionaires. So A, it didn't exist, and B, it was something I was really excited about. So I just started it, tried it, and after a while, a month into it, I was like, this is awesome. I'm getting 5 visits a day and making $1 a day from Google, and I was like, this is it. This is the dream. And fortunately, it grew a little bigger than that, and that was just all unexpected and lucky. But really, it was just something that I wanted to exist, and it didn't exist.
Okay, so, the way I guess the audience might not understand too well, but, we have 2 guys here that are working really well with Facebook. They're, social publishing sites that are very dependent on Facebook. And Celebrity Net Worth is not the same thing, though. Because obviously, the way you get visitors is you get me searching the net worth of Bill Gates, and I land up on your site. How did you get to rank first? Because I'm sure there's so many businesses in here that would love to rank #1 in Google. And you do it every day for every celebrity, for whatever term you're looking for. How did you do it?
So part of it was luck in that when we first started, this didn't really exist. So it was a very untapped niche of search queries is what we're talking about. And there also just happened to be a lot of interest in this on the internet. So it's my opinion that we almost sort of created the monster that it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the website became bigger, and as it became bigger, people learned more about it, and so people started being like, oh, that's something you can Google. So we were early enough where we planted our flag across basically the entire internet for every search you could do, and we stayed very high quality, and we did a lot of outreach to major news organizations, so we were always getting referenced, which increases our quality, and that's an important thing when trying to rank for Google, is how Google perceives the quality of your site. And then, there's a lot of technical stuff that we've had to do over the years, constantly tweaking and making sure the page is fast, and making sure as our entire traffic went from being 100% desktop and phones weren't a thing to almost 80% mobile only. And we had to get really good at ranking and having a page look good on a phone, on a slow connection. So the short answer is we got lucky, and then we just stayed really, we stayed on top of it the whole way. We never got lazy. The long answer is that, ranking high and having a relationship with Google is doable. It just, it's not like it's never going to be something that you can pay for, and it's never going to be something that you can do overnight. It's like a day in, day out, like, here's what we're going after, let's do a little bit every day.
Okay, so what would you say is the #1 thing a website needs to concentrate on in order to rank really well in Google? I know it takes a lot of time, and obviously, got to do this. It doesn't happen overnight. But if there's the one thing that you could give everybody in this room right now, what would you tell everyone to focus on? The one thing.
To create content that people would actually want to read, because if that's where you start, then everything else will fall into place. So if you make, my objective is to make articles that are interesting and compelling, but that are also very easy to both read and find for people. So if you load the site up with ads, or if you've got before they get there, a pre-roll video they have to watch, they're not going to like it, they're not going to come back. Google is smart enough to know when people search for something, click a website, and they stay on that site, and they click another page, and then they read that whole article, and they end up staying on your site for 2 or 3 minutes, and they come back tomorrow because it was still in their head. They know that that's a better experience than somebody clicking on something in their search results, going to the site, they get hit with a video ad, and the content that they wanted wasn't even there, or it wasn't a high-quality version of what they wanted, and they leave right away. So you shouldn't think about what does Google want, you should think about what does the user want, and everything will fall into place in the long run if you do that.
So it's all about having quality, valuable content to the user.
Yeah.
Which Scott over here is a genius about, actually. We all know that he started Viral Nova, but one of the major things that he's done is been able to really kind of find content and create content that resonates with the users on Facebook, that matches whatever the user is, and it matches their needs. So, but one of the more interesting things about Scott, actually, that I find, and I'm kind of curious about, is that he's been able to build 2 businesses and sell them for a lot of money. And he did it all by himself. It's a one-man show. There wasn't any corporate funding or venture capital. It was all done by himself as a one-man show. Scott, can you tell us how you did that?
Write it down and tell everybody.
First of all, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it, and I really love this country. I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I've had a great time so far. I think my story is more a testament of the world we live in today. People are more connected than ever before. Facebook alone has 1.5 billion users, which is, and every one of them is one friend request away from being connected to each other. Personally, I have about 500 friends on Facebook. Each of them have about 500 friends on Facebook. And I think once you do the math, you see the power that's only 2 steps away from 250,000 people, if my math of 500 times 500 is correct. So given that, one good idea from one individual can really spread unlike ever before. I think it's the most powerful marketing tool ever in existence. The two main businesses I've created have just really fully taken advantage of those. The other side of that is being a small operation myself, and I have had a couple freelancers and stuff help along the way, is that you can act and react so much faster. Sometimes whenever a company is too big, it takes, there's too much red tape, and there's too much to go through to make stuff happen. And I think that's why some of the largest companies in the world have been able to achieve scale, and they're still fast, like Facebook. I was just reading an article yesterday that said Mark Zuckerberg still fixes stuff himself on Facebook, which I just find really incredible. I have never really achieved that scale, obviously, but it's the fast reactions that help you grow.
Right. So I'm kind of curious. Is there like a secret sauce in all this, or especially when it comes to Facebook?
That's probably the main question I always get, but the answer is actually no. I kind of subscribe to two beliefs with that. One, I think you need a very healthy obsession. If you don't love what you do, it's kind of hopeless from the start. And I would actually add to that if you go into a business money first, at least in my experience, it's always failed. I've always gone into it passion first, and how do I, to what Brian said, how do I create something that is legitimately great and real people are really going to love, and the money always comes if you treat it for a website user first or any business customer first. The other thing that I'm a huge believer in that I always tell people is that I see so many people are trying to have success, and they're looking for that home run. They're looking for that 100% overnight. And I've found that you have a good idea, and then you focus on 1% improvements. I'm a believer that 101% improvements is going to get you there much faster, not faster, but more effectively than trying to go for that home run. It goes back to the whole, the tortoise versus the hare, whatever it is. Slow and steady wins the race kind of approach. So those are the two things.
Great. Jason, very similar to Scott in terms of the business models, but 90,000 concurrent users, 20,000 pieces of content happening in the same second. How do you scale? How did you scale to that?
So LittleThings is a really small company. We're like 50 people. So we do our best to keep control of everything from the top to the bottom. So for us, we realized that if we didn't be very, very aggressive with our page caching, that basically the hosting costs would put us out of business. So we're super, super aggressive with all of our content, all of our pages. Everything is cached in multiple places so that when users come in, nothing is being loaded from scratch. It's all already ready to go. And really, that's the simple and the quick answer to that.
Okay. So does that mean we all hear about these buzzwords, cloud, content distribution networks. Where do you guys sit in that whole infrastructure? Are you guys using Amazon Cloud? Are you using the Azure Cloud? Are you guys bare metal?
No, we're kind of the opposite of everybody else in the world, I think. We don't do any cloud hosting at all. We do all of our own dedicated hosting. And one of the reasons that we do that is we know for a fact that what we have is going to support X number of users, at any given time. But it also allows me, having a really small team, to contract out with another company that I can guarantee is always going to be available to help me. So if I don't have the expertise in-house, I have somebody there that actually does that stuff for us. Not in-house, but it's always available.
So what was the decision in not going with a cloud? I hear about it, that it's a great solution. I don't know too much about the cloud. Obviously, you being CTO of LittleThings, you have a pretty good opinion on that. But it's simply just because you have more flexibility and you didn't want your content sitting on a cloud, or?
Well, not really. I mean, for us, a lot of it is the fact that we don't have that expertise in-house of an individual or a staff or a team that is going to work only on scaling, like on our back end, on our hardware. By having an outsourced, dedicated company that does that, I have somebody there 24/7 that I can call up and be like, hey, I'm having a problem. I need 63 guys to look at this, and they get on it. So it's way more cost effective for us as a company in the long term.
So I got a question here off the cusp. What happens when that 90,000 concurrent users jumps to 180,000 concurrent users within 5 seconds? Because that's what Facebook can do.
For us, actually nothing. We can handle that with no problem, actually. So
when does it become a problem?
For us, it may become a problem maybe 250. 300.
And what do you do if you grow that fast overnight? Because sometimes all of a sudden you have a really hot article in the Facebook feed, and it goes, and you never know when it's going to stop.
Yeah, when that happens, we'll be adding additional servers sort of for us at that point, it's almost like having a cloud infrastructure,
yeah.
But for us, it's going to be literally adding servers to a rack very quickly.
Awesome. All right, so I'll move to John and ask him a few questions. There's so many I could ask John. I don't know which one to start with, but I guess what makes most sense is, what's your favorite project that you've, out of all the projects you've been a part of?
Well, most people would think it was starting the Raptors because it's fun doing a sports team, but I'm most proud of satellite radio and the fact that there's 2.7 million Canadians now that pay. For those of you who aren't from the US or Canada, satellite radio is almost every car manufacturer today has AM, FM, and then satellite radio, and you pay $15 a month to get up to 200 channels. So we got, you know, almost 10% of the country listening to our audio service, and it was the scale of it that, you know, when it started at the beginning, we had no subscribers, and you knew there was a day where you're just going to keep adding scale and get that recurring revenue. And I think, Chris, you know, a lot of people think what's an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur is a risk taker, but I think most of us, if you ask us what we would say why we don't agree with that, it's because you really are a planner. You've got an idea in your head. You're trying to minimize your cost. You're trying to figure out how you can get scale on it so that at the end of the day, you know, to what he said earlier, and for any of the younger guys or girls here thinking of starting businesses, you can't think about how much money you're going to make. You have to think about how good a job you're going to do, how you're going to look after your customers, how you're going to make sure you have a great service, and the money looks after itself.
So why XM as your favorite? What is it that puts that at the top of the list?
Just because, you know, I wanted to, I was trying to figure out what could be something on the technology side that I could bring to the country that would kind of be a legacy. And it was, you know, as I said, the fact that every car now today has this piece of hardware installed that people pay $15 a month to get. It's kind of cool.
Well, that's pretty awesome. Well, I'm gonna get right into sports right now with you, because I'm dying to hear the answers to a few of these, and I'm sure some other people in the audience want to hear it. But what were the politics involved in bringing the first Canadian NBA team to Toronto?
It wasn't politics like government politics, but there was a ton of things we had to deal with, such as you're bringing basketball to a hockey town in a hockey country. So the media were automatically against us. It's like, how can you dare, invade on hockey's turf, because basketball and hockey are played at the same time of year. Not to mention the fact that when we were going after the team, there was 2 other groups in Toronto, so it was 3 of us trying to get be successful in getting the team. And one of the groups involved Labatt Breweries, who owned the Blue Jays at the time, who had just won back-to-back World Series, the baseball championship. So everyone thought they were the odds-on guy to do it, but I think being young, having conviction, I worked with all the owners. I flew to every city. I gave them my vision and my plan for what the team would be like. And I was 33 years old when we landed the team. And it was just like everyone up here. You got that belief that you could do the best job, and you just go sell. And and then getting the arena done, and now the Raptors sell out almost every night. Basketball's forever here to stay in Canada, and 2 of the last 3 years, the #1 pick in the NBA draft has been a kid from Toronto. And every one of those kids says it's all because of the Raptors why they're playing the sport.
That's amazing. Okay, well, then I got another one for you. When are we going to bring the NFL to Canada?
That's another project down the road. But let's talk to these guys, because their stuff is... I have a question for you, because in the relevance to... We've got a lot of Europeans here. Any of you guys. Is all your stuff kind of North American in terms of your user base? Now, I know there'd be a kid in Sweden who will pick up celebrity net worth, but do you do it for French celebrities or Russian celebrities? Like, how does it work once you get out of North America?
So we are majority North American celebrities, and most of our traffic is from North America. I think mainly because all of our content is in English right now. And when we first started out, we concentrated on people who are mainly famous, or not mainly famous, because a guy like Jay-Z or Drake, they're famous everywhere, but there clearly are a lot of reality stars that have no profile outside of even the United States. Like, even if you went to Canada, you wouldn't have heard of some of the most popular people on the site. So one of the long-term growth strategies that I have is to change that, obviously. But to expand internationally, one thing I'm 100% certain of is you have to do it organically. You have to find, okay, you can't just throw up a page and hope that you have the language right. Like the language needs to be perfect. So if we were to translate all of our pages into Spanish, it has to be really perfect Spanish. You have to understand if there's a market there in the first place. Are people in Mexico or Spain, are they searching for these terms? And what terms are they searching for? And when they land on the site, you kind of want them to have a native experience, as if they don't know they're on an American website that happens to have a Spanish page. Or you have an entire new site that is specifically dedicated. So it's almost like creating a new business unit anywhere you go. But I have noticed that as we've gotten bigger, our profile has gotten bigger, we do start getting a lot more visits from people who English is their second language, but they understand, the majority of the broad strokes of the content on the site.
Yeah, all the Macedonians know who the Kardashians are.
Yeah, exactly. And they may have searched for their net worth and ended up on our site and hopefully understood what it was all about and had a good experience, as opposed to sort of like if I were to land on a Macedonian website, it's difficult for me, and I would hope that long term we could make it in a dream world, so anyone visiting from anywhere in the world would feel like, oh, this was almost custom made for me. Because when I first started the site, you couldn't actually make that much money. This was really weird. You couldn't make much money on the internet from traffic outside of the United States. Lots of the ad networks they just completely discounted non-North American traffic. And so if you were this enormous site in Brazil, you might make the same amount of money as a very small site in the United States. And that has changed enormously in the last couple of years, as companies like Google and their ad teams and a ton of other ad networks have sort of proliferated. I actually make more money per user from a Japanese visitor than an American visitor. So if I could concentrate on Japanese visitors and even just get like a 20% increase in the people coming from Japan seeing Japanese ads, it would have a pretty big impact on our bottom line. So that shows where the world is changing, at least in terms of, clearly, as we go forward, non-North American internet traffic is going to be extremely valuable, important.
Awesome. I want to ask you guys a few questions. One question here, and it kind of it applies to, I guess, all three of you. But you never opted for any venture capital, did you? At any point? And Jason, did you ever venture into? Did LittleThings ever take any capital?
They did. That was actually way early on. LittleThings used to be part of a parent company.
Yeah.
That parent company had funding, and
but LittleThings.com itself hasn't taken on any capital, and Celebrity Net Worth hasn't taken on any capital either, as Valuations. So why did you make that decision? Did you need it? You obviously didn't, but
there seems to be nowadays this big push where you have an idea and you immediately run out to Silicon Valley and you raise like $500,000 and you give up 40% of your idea before anything's ever been done. So I think that's crazy, first of all, because you don't know if the idea is ever going to work. So when I thought of Celebrity Net Worth, and I'm sure when Scott was working on Godvine, you had no idea, or Harald Nova, or both, you had no idea it was ever going to be successful in the first place. So the idea that you would go out and give away half your company so you could have a cushion, that didn't make any sense. There are a lot of downsides of venture capital, because at no point in my life have I had, with this business, and Scott is the same way, I think, we've never had someone who could tell us, hey, you need to do this. And in those early growth stages, you need to be able to sort of shoot from the hip and say, my gut tells me that we need to be doing this because this is better for the site. And if you have a person who's giving you a lot of money and owns half your business, and they have someone telling them, oh, this site needs to have all this stuff on it, and you need to go this direction, you have to listen to that person, and then that might take you in a really bad direction. I personally have always found that it's nice to be able to, and the way the world is right now, you don't need money. I mean, how much did you spend, Scott, to create Godvine originally?
I think the domain was $10. And yeah, I had like an old CMS that I used on it, and Viral Nova was $50, $10 for the domain, and a WordPress theme that was $40. That theme creator ended up making a ton of money because of all the clones that popped up. that thought that the secret was the theme, which it wasn't at all. But one thing that I would add, though, is that I think Brian and I, we are fortunate to be in a space where it is optional to take money or not. I think there are a lot of businesses out there that they do need money, and it probably could have or would have made sense at some point for me to take some. I'm glad I didn't, and I'm sure Brian's glad he didn't as well. But so I'm not really anti venture capital or anything. I just feel fortunate to be in this space. Another thing I would add, and I lived in New York. I'm a small town person originally, but I lived in New York City for the past year, and I really got to see different perspectives. And I've noticed that a lot of these companies that they'll, like, you know, a few months in, they'll take a few $1 million or whatever. They're spending it like it's not theirs, because I mean it is, but it isn't. And I feel like if I'm spending my own money, I'm going to do it a lot more efficiently, and I'm going to care about every dollar, and it really eliminates the ability to just throw money at nothing, because every single penny counts. So there's that benefit of not taking any money as well.
Do you feel like it puts you at a disadvantage, though, to some competition that will take money? Like BuzzFeed, for example, is huge in the space, and they obviously take a lot of money. It's open to the floor to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, there are articles out there comparing the size of Viral Nova and LittleThings as well to BuzzFeed, which is again a testament to the world that we live in today. Another thing that matters is not everybody has the same goals personally. You know, whenever I started Viral Nova, I wanted something to have fun with and maybe make a little bit of money on the side, and not, you know, I wasn't trying to be BuzzFeed. So the comparisons of Viral Nova to BuzzFeed are not my own. I didn't set out to compete with BuzzFeed. So a lot of it has to do with personal goals too. I mean, somebody might be happy, you know, making a modest living off their business, and other people are going for the moon, and neither is wrong. But you get a lot of comparisons from journalists and stuff.
Just to expand on that a little bit, I know in a previous life, I did a startup where we took money, and it changed everything very quickly. Where they came in, they handed us $4.2 million and said, we know 40% of your company, and now you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z was not at all what we wanted to do or should have been doing. So 9 months later, that $4.2 million was gone, and we ended up laying off like 65% of our company on the same day. So it took us away from what we wanted to be doing, and it took us away from doing the stuff that we were passionate about, and took us to doing stuff and, you know, specifically to chase a dollar.
Yeah, I don't know, I've started half dozen, 7 businesses. The ones where I kind of pre-funded, like I raised a ton of money, management ended up spending it a lot faster than when we lived hand to mouth. And we had to make sure that we had every dollar before we could spend it.
On the flip side of this, if you're in a position where you're not so early on in your idea, where you have a little bit of leverage because the business is even just moderately successful or showing some sort of gains, you can get a strategic partner, which I think is super valuable. So somebody like Scott, if you had early on, once you had built Viral Nova up to a certain point where you could go to some people and get a decent amount of money without having to give up the whole business, and if you added to that, that person maybe has some connections at Facebook, so you feel like or a potential future acquirer, like maybe you take $1 million from some higher up at BuzzFeed or the venture capital company behind BuzzFeed, so that when the day comes that you're interested in selling, it's an email from that person to that person. And so there is always an argument for why I think taking some strategic money can be very valuable, but I think we've all pretty much felt at this point that if you can go without it for as long as possible, there's some pretty large advantages.
True, I totally agree with that, actually. Just going through the process, and, you know, I think we've all talked to venture firms and gone through it and debated, walked away, taken, whatever it may be. But, you know, I'm gonna take another question to John. When it comes, like, we have 3 entrepreneurs here. One, Brian, you know, obviously, I can imagine you've been approached by many companies. Scott keeps selling his companies. LittleThings, it's only a matter of time. So, John, I was just wondering, do you think that there's a lot of talk right now of unicorn valuations? Obviously, Fidelity just wrote down a huge amount of 25% of Snapchat's valuation, and the list is going to continue by the looks of it. But do you think we're kind of hitting a peak right now in the industry? Should everybody be selling, or should everybody be sitting tight? What do we do?
Yeah, I do think valuations are frothy across the globe. Like, in a North American context, I think some of these tech valuations you're seeing put on companies, Uber at whatever 40, 50 billion, and they just keep privately marking it. Who knows? My personal feeling is that it depends what you want to do with your life. If you want to go start painting or retire on a ranch, take the money and run. If you want to, I've always found the smartest thing is to take enough money off the table when you can, so that you will never regret not having that chance. And everyone's got a different amount of what they need to enjoy life, if it's 5 million, 10 million, or something else. But don't be so greedy that you feel you have to stay in all the way, and then it could go back to zero, in which case, why did you do it other than the love of doing it? So I think valuations are high. My advice would be take some money off the table, but if you want to keep working and doing what you're doing because you love it, stay in control.
Okay. Now to Scott, I guess you did take some money off the table a few times already now, and I guess you're still at Viral Nova, but I guess I want to kind of pry into your vision for the future. Obviously, you probably haven't had that much time to think about what you're going to do next, but what do you see in the next 2 years? What's the major next trend? You've been very good at identifying them in the past, so I'm curious to know what's happening next.
We decided last night that he's going to come work at LittleThings.
Besides the fact you're all moving to Macedonia, what else would you?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer really well on the spot. But I do think that Facebook is actually still in its infancy. I mean, like I said, 1.5 billion people that are all connected so closely opens up opportunity that we can't even imagine right now. And I think that I'm sure Zuckerberg right now is working on something that we're not even going to believe is real in the next 2 to 3 years. So I would still, I think everything going on today will continue to evolve and be improved. I'm still a huge fan of social publishing, obviously. Another thing, I was reading something the other day that said that messaging is overtaking social networks as the #1 activity of people digitally. And whenever I'll text my mom or Brian or whoever, it still feels a little bit archaic. It still feels a little bit basic. It's just a message. I can send a picture. Now I can send little funny emoticons and things like that. But I can see that really, really evolving. I feel like there's going to be a day where everything else we do is just pulled into messaging. I don't know. I assume maybe WhatsApp is pretty big here. iMessage is big in the U.S. And it's still just kind of texting. I think there will just be ways, like on every website, like say my mom wants something for Christmas or whatever, she just click like a button on the website and like I can order it in one click type of thing, right from the messenger. A lot of stuff right now you're still being taken out of the messenger, so I feel like one of the big things coming technologically in the near future, like 1 to 2 years, like you asked, would just be huge improvements in messaging.
So, in a sense, like almost like a hybrid of an email and a WhatsApp, or is it...
Not really. I mean, I feel like email is even slower. I'm thinking like just a faster paced, more integrated messaging. I know, obviously never used it, but WeChat in China, they're making so much more money than Western messengers because I think it's heavily because of games, and games are really integrated within their messaging.
So an integration of content within
Yeah,
might be
and
something of an evolution of that kind.
exactly. And to Brian's point, if we really knew, we'd be in a better spot.
I have this feeling you know, though.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, there's a little connection here, aside from myself and John, to Macedonia. Brian and Jason both are, actually investors here in Macedonia. Jason has his whole development team for LittleThings based in Macedonia, and Brian has some developers here as well. So I have a question with respect to that. What is your experience in Macedonia?
So Jason and I actually talked about this last night at dinner. We have very similar, very positive experiences, and I think so Jason, you should really talk about this first because you have more of a technical background experience with developers, tell the anecdote about your previous experience with outsourcing and then what your experience was here.
So previously I'd used other outsourced entities around the world and been very, very frustrated with them. Just the work was very, very bad. It ended up costing us more in the long run because we would have things built, they would come back, they would technically work, but they would be sort of a shambles. So we would end up scrapping the whole thing, rebuilding it from scratch again, and now we're in for more money. We use Cosmic here, and they've been fantastic. Everything that comes back, everything that gets done is super well thought out. I just feel like the level of engineers here is beyond what I was seeing elsewhere. They just seem a lot smarter. I know
creative, I would say. Typically with outsourcing, it's like you say X, they do X, which is, I guess, what you expect them to do. But if there's a problem that you didn't anticipate and they run into it, they can't react to it. Whereas I feel like maybe because in Macedonia the English language is stronger and you guys are a little more understanding of the internet, more so than I would say people in India, that there's more creative on the spot thinking where I'll ask something to be done, and the next day I'd be like, hey, I know you said that this was the way you wanted it, but we ran into this problem, and so we kind of solved it this way, and it's usually really creative and well done. Which is awesome. There's also, I think, which is really important, there's a drive to make the client happy, which, as opposed to do the bare minimum. And that is really awesome because, you're other side of the world, I'm not even face-to-face. I don't really face-to-face with them. It's all via email. So to have people who are passionate about you making you feel like the project is done over the moon is great.
Yeah, and I'd also add to that you get feedback from them. So, for instance, a lot of times for me, we'll have projects that are being worked on, and our product guy in our office will be putting stories into our system, and they'll be getting worked on, and then my guy Vlad, who's here, he'll come back to us and say, hey, what about this? What about that? What about that? He'll bring up things that we didn't even think about yet. And a lot of that is because they have a very intimate knowledge of our code base and what our site does and how we use it. So it's for me, it's almost like having a group in my office sitting next to me.
Yeah, and I think that the experience that I've had with other countries in outsourcing, I always get the impression they're trying to do the bare minimum, and then when you push back and say, I know you did it exactly the bare minimum, but you need to do this, it's like you're fighting an uphill battle to get them to do a little bit more than the bare minimum, and I feel the exact opposite here. So that's been a great experience. And then beyond that, what's been really interesting is because of the time difference, I think Jason and I both feel like we are this 24-hour efficiency machine where when I wake up, I've got a list, an email of these are the things that we accomplished, and here's the questions that we have. And then I go through those questions and I give feedback and I give new tasks for the next day. And when I'm done at 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I go off and do my life and go to sleep. And then when I wake up, there's all that stuff done. And it's like we're constantly moving forward.
Yeah, that was actually the thing that I got first when I first started working with Cosmic was like, at the end of the day, LittleThings, we have a tendency to make tons and tons of changes very quickly. So at the end of my day, I would, you send an email, and I would put stories in our system saying, here, I need these 10 things by the morning. They're super important. And when I come in the office at 8:39 in the morning, they're all done. So for me, it's like magic. It's like, great, I go to bed, nothing's done, I come up, it's great. There was a genie working on this at night, it's all awesome.
Do you guys want to be economic promoters for Macedonia?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. All right, more of a general question for anybody to kind of pick up. What are the hottest startups right now? Anybody?
Brad and I were just talking about this. I really like Slack. They're based out of Austin, Texas. Basically, it's collaboration, kind of like sort of like a chat room, but it's really work focused. And going back to exactly what these guys were just talking about, as we work with people all over the world, that becomes more and more important. Viral Nova, which I sold a large percentage of it about 1.5 years ago, and then the new partner had hired several people. We recently went fully remote, so like we're living on Slack, and it's really kind of like they're in the same room as us, which is extremely important as digital companies continue to work with people from all over the world. So I'm a big fan of Slack.
Anyone else?
I struggled with this one because, I think that there's definitely a lot of companies out there that are getting a lot of attention, but how many of them I'm actually using on a day-to-day basis? I don't really know. I understand why Snapchat is so important, because I was at a wedding recently and people are no longer sharing photos on Facebook about an event that they're at. They're taking a Snapchat and they're filming it. So I think something like a Snapchat or a Periscope is definitely, I don't know if Periscope is familiar out here, but it's like, right now if I had Periscope, the app open, I could hold my phone up and anyone who follows me on Periscope could see exactly what I'm doing. And it didn't really click for me why that was important until Floyd Mayweather, he was fighting against Manny Pacquiao a couple months back, and someone in the front row was clearly periscoping the whole fight because he was in the front row and his phone was out the whole time. And I'm like, oh, he's periscoping. So if you had known who that person was, if you were friends with him and you followed him on Facebook, you would have had a live, and I don't know how professional boxing would have felt about this pay-per-view, but you would have had a live feed of the match from the front row right there. And I think there are 1,000 instances where that would be fascinating. Like if I couldn't have attended this conference, we could have had a Periscope person up here and you'd feel like you were part of it. So I think that's a really interesting company.
All right, anyone else? Or
I actually make it a point not to pay too much attention to all the various startups and what's hot and what's not, because I feel like it sort of distracts me from what I'm working on. So I actually tend to kind of ignore all that stuff.
okay.
Yeah, and I would add that the hottest startup right now is probably something we haven't even heard of. It's probably a kid in the garage or a student in a dorm room somewhere creating the next big thing that we actually have no idea about right now. So
I'd agree with that, for sure. So, there's a lot of talk with the changes that are happening on the internet when it comes to websites, and in particular, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. They're all moving towards a new way, and that new way is like Facebook Instant, Snapchat Discover, or Twitter Amp. If people in the audience aren't familiar with that, is that these large companies that control a lot of traffic on the internet are now going to start, asking the content providers, whether it's Rumble or whether it's Viral Nova or LittleThings that produce content, including the New York Times, etc., to start bringing their content within the platform. So Facebook will no longer be sending this traffic outwards to their properties and to their websites. It'll now stay within the closed walls of Facebook. Actually, I believe LittleThings is already part of the program. I was reading in the New York Times that you guys are part of the program already. But from my understanding, the internet is moving very quickly into this direction where all publishing and content will now live within these platforms. Does that mean that websites are going to be a thing of the past very soon? We know that apps kind of threatened it, but it didn't really happen. But this seems kind of scary.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick. So when I created Celebrity Net Worth in 2009, 2010, the most important thing was to get the best domain name. And the first domain I had was celebnetworth.com, which was heartbreaking because it wasn't the perfect domain name. And then I eventually was able to acquire the full domain name, but it cost me a lot of money. If we were starting today, that would not be necessary. LittleThings and Viral Nova, these are words that could have been anything. Then you didn't need the domain name to have the website. You could just have two random words together and a really strong Facebook presence, and you'd have tons and tons of traffic. And now I do think that in the future, there's a world where you don't even need the actual physical website because your entire business is a Facebook page where the content lives within Facebook. So that's a blessing and a curse because clearly it threatens my current business model, but at the same time, it's going to force websites to not be so heavy on ads and to what we were saying earlier, it's going to drastically improve the user experience, which as an internet user, I really like. So if that means that my articles are loading faster and the videos are loading faster and I'm not getting bombarded with ads, it's great as a user. As a business owner, it's a little scary, but you have to think that, okay, we'll figure this out. That means you have to either make more with less or learn to live with less or get creative by coming up with something that doesn't exist. Like maybe all of our content lives on Facebook and instead of relying on flashy banner ads that are distracting, the content is directly sold to an advertiser like Coca-Cola. And on the article I'm writing, maybe it's making me way more money because I'm directly selling that instead of relying on a third party, which takes a cut and pumps in something that I don't even control. So there are going to be advantages, but right now it is a little scary, I would say.
Yeah, at first, once this trend started with Facebook and even Google starting to just pull the content right in their platform, it made me a little nervous, but I think the most applicable example would be TV. My favorite TV shows, they don't have their own cable television network. They live on the same kind of medium that every other show lives on. So I think it's one of those things where there's going to be some resistance, but ultimately we'll just have to go with it. And the good news is that Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, they're not content creators, so they're still going to need us. Or they don't have any content, and they need to make sure that we're happy, or we will push back as a whole.
On the Facebook incident front, for us, it's going to be really interesting to see if we can monetize it. Obviously, there's less on that page versus what somebody would get on our normal mobile site. So for long term, I don't know. I'm not really curious to see if it works out. From a technical side, though, part of it is super interesting to me because it actually offloads a lot of the overhead that we have on the back end to Facebook. So not all of it. They're just loading text. They're basically they're sucking in your data and they're producing text. They're still representing images and things from you, but it is moving some of your overhead to Facebook, which for me is a win, right? Because it's going to save me a little bit of money in the long term.
So I heard the publishers actually did push back, and you'd be one of them, right?
Yeah, I know that like Joe, our CEO, and several of other, maybe like Huffington Post and a couple of others have sort of pushed back a little bit saying, hey, how are we going to make this work for us? How are we going to monetize it? Are we going to get the traffic? And Facebook is still in beta, so even as we've been releasing things to it, it's been changing. So, one day it's totally different from the next day in terms of what we're allowed to do and what we can see, and even the interface that we're seeing on their side. So I have a feeling that it's probably going to change quite a bit more in the next month or 2 months or 3 months. And a lot of that's going to be based on the feedback that people like us are giving.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs. What they'll do is when they start their business, they'll go out. We talked about raising money. They'll even jump on a plane and move to the valley. But I guess everyone here didn't really do that. Do you think there's less of a need to be in that ecosystem in the valley to achieve the goals that you want to achieve? Like, for one instance, I think getting into Facebook Instant, being close to Facebook will actually have the benefit of getting into these early programs. I know for Rumble, we kind of missed the boat because we just didn't know anybody at Facebook for the video side in terms of getting into their early program. I know we'll be in very shortly, but it's nice to get in a little earlier than everybody else. Does that put us at a disadvantage? Because I'm based in Toronto, you're out of Canton, Ohio, and you're kind of close, but you're in Manhattan.
I don't think that it does personally, because even for us, like, Facebook is a few blocks away from us, the New York office, but we don't have a lot of, it's not like we're going over there hanging out. It's happened a couple of times, but for the most part, it's just, who you know. Like, if you know somebody there, you have a connection, they're gonna hook you up, and even for us on the Facebook Instant side, as we were moving through getting things ready on our side, we had a lot of back and forth with them. And then finally, we had somebody on our team who's friendly with somebody there who finally basically called that person up and said, hey, we're not getting the feedback that we need, help us out. And then literally immediately, I get like 10 emails from this person on Facebook saying, oh, what do you need? So really, I don't think it's really geography. I think it's just more about the connections that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you could probably spin both scenarios to be positive or negative. I spent a fair amount of time in San Francisco because it's where I grew up, and it's obviously relevant to my business. And I didn't find that being in San Francisco was any better than being in Los Angeles or in Macedonia or in Ohio. A lot of people who are in San Francisco are very interesting, but they are not actually doing super creative things. They are working just in a mid-level position at Facebook or Google, so that person's actually not going to be super helpful for you if you need that kind of help. That kind of help is a real connection that you can get by just pounding the pavement and making it happen, and you can be anywhere in the world for that. You go into the right conferences, meeting people, and following through. So just living in the Valley, I mean, maybe there's an advantage. There's definitely a different mindset there. But that could be bad. Like people in the Valley, if I had the idea for Celebrity Net Worth right now, all of my friends would say, oh, you got to go raise money, and you got to go do this, and you got to do this, and all that advice would have been bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, I moved to New York for this very reason. So I guess I can speak firsthand that I did meet a lot of people that I otherwise wouldn't have, but in the outcome really wasn't any different than if I had stayed in Ohio, for me personally.
Okay. Well, I want to bring the questions to the floor and kind of just open this up. If anybody out there has any questions for us, we're happy to answer them. I know that I have a few in front of me right now, but one's already been answered. Two of them are outsourcing. Scott, there's one question here from the floor that just came to me. Why did you sell your business?
For money. I honestly, I wish I had a better answer. It kind of goes back to what John said about taking some money whenever you can. For me personally, my goals in life were never to create a Facebook or something. It was to maybe ride a wave and make my kind of nest egg that brings comfort to me and my future family. That's kind of what drove me. Like, if I had personal security and the ability to come to Macedonia, like I did.
So another question from the audience is, and it kind of goes to anybody here, but it kind of only applies to Scott now, because we've kind of answered it. Would you consider outsourcing in this region?
Yeah, so I was going to chime in whenever these two were talking about Macedonia. So I've outsourced over the last 10 years. I've tried India, Pakistan, China. I mean, even it's not outsourcing, I guess, with the U.S. All over the place, and I've just had terrible luck, terrible experiences. And having met Vlad and Victor from Cosmic, and obviously hearing these guys over the last week talk about it, I absolutely would. Yeah.
Amazing. Victor, you heard that, right? Or some of that. Any other questions from the crowd? All right. Mike, I guess. There's someone behind Mike as well.
This is two questions, but related, more for business generation out of Macedonia. And the first part is, if you start a business, if you want to stay in Macedonia, what type of a application or a solution would you think would have the most probability of success? Because Brian, you mentioned before the U.S., you were tailoring your applications and to those services. Second and related, couple entrepreneurs from Germany, I think the Seymour brothers, what their business model was to find whatever is hot in the US and copy it and make it tailored to the local market. I believe they had an eBay clone. Within 2 years, they sold it for $250 million back to eBay. Did the same thing for Groupon. Did the City Smart solution, I think within a year, they sold it back to Groupon for $1 billion. And especially as you're mentioning that most of the entrepreneurs look at US only, whether there may be an opportunity for entrepreneurs here to keep their ear to what could be hot. Would there be an opportunity for local entrepreneurs to develop
Well, yes,
business?
that goes to what I was saying about 5 years ago when I first created my site. You couldn't make money off of the traffic that was outside of North America. Even Canada was lower, like you couldn't make as much money off Canada. That's changed so much now. So if somebody locally in Macedonia had an idea for a business, it's a global economy now, especially with the internet. So, and it's just going to get more and more global. So, the idea of cloning a business, I mean, why not? If you see something that works, make it. I mean, I guarantee that. Well, I can only speak for myself, but Celebrity Net Worth wasn't a totally original idea. I mean, Forbes existed, and there were magazines like the Rob Report that wrote about cool cars and stuff. So I just sort of did it in a twist, and so there's always going to be that opportunity. I hope nobody makes the Celebrity Net Worth of Macedonia, because that would be, I would prefer to do that myself. But I definitely think there's opportunity in the world, and the most important thing is to do something that you're passionate about. So sure, if you see a business that's already successful, but you don't care about eBay, you don't have experience with eBay, it's probably not going to be successful. If you're a huge fan of football, and you live in Macedonia, and you look around and you say, hey, I'm looking around for good content about football, and there's nothing out there, create it. And it'll probably be successful. And if it's not, and if it doesn't become Facebook, it's just like Celebrity Net Worth. If Celebrity Net Worth had been a tenth as big as it was, I would have been super happy with that, because it was something I loved to do every day. And it allowed me to quit my day job. So to do something every day that I love and go on fun, weird trips like this to Macedonia on a, what day is today? Like a Thursday? We're in Macedonia. My parents are like, what are you doing? I'm like, don't worry about it. So that can, and that's the point is that's very achievable nowadays on the internet. You don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg with $40 billion. You can have a small business that produces a lifestyle for you, and that can exist anywhere very easily with a $50 startup cost.
Yeah, and to answer the first question, I'm a huge advocate of IT here in Macedonia, and if I were to give any advice to Macedonians, IT is obviously the place to start. And the barrier of entry to get into the business that we're all in is really low. Like
$50.
Yeah, there you go. Like it doesn't really take that much money. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of intelligence. It's not about money when it comes to the businesses that we're in. It's really about grinding and hustling as much as you can and getting it done.
I would also say that yesterday on the jury we saw it was 8 teams.
Oh, that was super inspiring.
High school students, local high school students who all had very viable ideas. That was just awesome to watch. So there's lots of ideas.
Yeah, yesterday we were sitting on as a jury panel of high school students in Macedonia, and were just blown away. They came up with some really interesting ideas, and in addition to that, they presented them really well for high school students. Like I think Scott and I had a little chat. Are we going to give them some money? They're actually really doing this? Like, what's going on? So yeah, I think sticking into the space that we're in for young Macedonians is a great place to start.
One thing I definitely want to say there though is it takes examples. So to put on a conference like this and to have events like that, I don't think you become a web entrepreneur in a vacuum. You see someone else has done it, and then you go and do it. Like the way Scott and I met was when I was working at a company called Break.com. We actually acquired a site of his a long time ago, and part of that acquisition, Scott had to teach me how to run the website, and here was this guy who were the exact same age, and he was like, wait a minute, he's doing this, and he's making a lot more money than I am, and he owns it. That was the key, but it was it was an aha moment for me because I could see he's just a guy and he's my age and he can do it. And if he can do it, I can do it too. So without that probably would not ever happen. So to have conferences like this and to have for those high school people to keep coming to things and seeing that there's an end game to this as opposed to just like, oh, we're presenting and then I'm never going to think about this ever again. It's important.
Yeah.
Any more questions? All right. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Vadim. I have two questions for either Brian or Scott. Usually when we hear successful stories, we rarely hear about the failures. And I would like to know how did you manage with that at such a young age? And the second question is, did you have to leave education? Because it seems like that's how it goes.
Did you have to leave education?
Yeah.
No, neither of us had to do that.
Because
No.
that's the case
Yeah.
with some successful entrepreneurs.
No.
Because you're so young.
Yeah.
Let me answer that question.
Yeah, go
though.
ahead.
I've failed as many times as I've succeeded. You cannot fear failure because then you won't succeed. And you actually learn more when you have a business fail. You learn so many things about what you should have or could have done differently that makes your success that much better.
Any more questions? All right.
So my question would go to both Brian and Jason, because they have both experience with outsourcing to Macedonian IT companies. And obviously you're satisfied with the services that you're getting from this outsource. And by the way, it's obviously that Macedonia cannot compete with India in terms of volume, but in terms of quality. So do you think that eventually Macedonian IT companies which are working as outsourcers that can eventually charge premium for the quality of the services they can provide?
In today's North American average mindset, you do sort of expect some sort of discount. Not discount, but like...
I think you're just trying to make sure that we don't raise your prices, right?
Yeah, I think it's actually a little too expensive right now. So maybe a little cheaper. Obviously, if the quality goes up, there's always going to be an argument for why the price should go up. And if I got 10 times better work from Macedonian developers than American developers, I'd be willing to pay 10 times for that. Quality gets, success breeds success, so for sure.
I would also say this kind of leads into something that was said at an earlier panel about the sort of entitlement issues that we have in the United States. For example, for me to hire an engineer in the States, in New York especially, somebody coming right out of college is going to expect an absurd amount of money that makes no sense in any world. And me personally, I can't bring myself to do that. I can't hire that person. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I would much rather spend that money elsewhere to get quality developers. And eventually, yeah, they're gonna you can bring that premium up. But for us, we're still going to have the issue of engineers in the States wanting more than they really should be getting. So I feel like there's always going to be the market here.
But also keep in mind that the price discount is a really good marketing strategy to get in, because when we first started doing this, it was like, well, I don't know, I've got a bad experience with outsourcing, but the price was hard to resist, so we started with just one person, and then I think 6 months or a year later, we doubled, and I know, Jason, your company has grown, so it's a good way to get in the door for people who are maybe a little hesitant to try it, and then all of a sudden you see the quality, and you're doubling the amount of work you're doing, and you're spending twice as much, so maybe that's how you get in. I don't know. Yeah, and mobile is very low still because you're never going to get a $10 per visitor CPM on mobile because the ad is this big and it doesn't open to something really cool and fancy like it does on desktop. So that's been a huge disadvantage in the last 2 years as the entire internet has shifted to mobile. It's starting to catch up now. So it really depends on the type of business you have, because then you have other businesses like Netflix where the per user monetization can be very high, because if they get you locked in and you're paying $20 a month, the average person will probably stay for 6 months, so it's pretty high.
Yeah, Viral Nova makes around $7 per 1,000 visitors. Just as a real world example, it might seem like how am I going to get so many visitors if this all adds up? But it kind of goes back to the power of Facebook, as Jason knows as well.
I would just say that I don't have specific numbers for what we get per user, but I know we have a small team who's just dedicated to making that number larger every single day, and they're really, really, really good at it. So they're also a thorn in my side, because that means they're constantly coming to me and saying, hey, let's try these 17 different ad networks, and let's move this ad 4 pixels to the left. But it all works. So like I know that we're seeing numbers that are probably somewhat significantly higher than a lot of other publishing sites. And a lot of that is just due to the team that we have that works on this constantly.
Any other questions? It's a good chance to ask these entrepreneurs. Okay, I see one over there.
Hi, I'm Nina. I don't have a really big question. I just want to make a comment to break the ice, because Sonia was speaking about gender gap, and I see men everywhere, men asking questions. So speaking about Discount, I am the co-founder, not that big entrepreneur as you are. Thank you very much for sharing your inspiring stories. Of Grouper, it's a group on loan daily deal site in Macedonia that we did. At the first, when we opened the site like 6 years ago, we got a lot of comments from the media, like, this is not such an innovation, they're just bringing this existing model to the Macedonian market. So it's a problem of mindset of criticizing things. The things that you have done is not such an innovative model, but you're doing it better than the others, and you have something specific to offer more value to the users. So I just wanted to make a comment on Brian about that you have to find the thing that you want to do. Like, for example, you mentioned football, if you want to offer some content. It's not that simple in such a small country, because there's only 2 million people, and if there's someone that really loves football and writes about football, the market is niche really, really low. And Macedonian websites don't use Google Ads that much, so you won't probably make money from that if you're in such a small country in Macedonia. But on the other hand, you can do something for the foreign markets and offer something from here content. However, my comment was about that you really have to start from identifying the market needs and see what the market needs, not just... So I wanted to ask you, when you started your businesses, did you start it from identifying, yes, the market will need this and I will offer additional value, or it was just like a wish that you just wanted to do that? Thank you.
For me, it was definitely a market need that I found on my own by searching for things that didn't have an answer, or there wasn't anything out there answering it, and it just happened to also be something I was really interested in, which was a great marriage, because if you're innately passionate about it and there's a market need, then it's pretty powerful.
I think let's not lose sight, though, that so many of our kids in this country speak English, and the world is global, and part of what these guys have done is they're thinking with the broadest application in terms of what they can create. So there's no limits to try and think of applications. As he said, he could be in Canton, Ohio, or Long Island, or whatever else. And it's a matter of, connecting the right people, being persistent, sometimes getting on a plane. But you have to think broader to be successful. If you want to go with a Macedonian soccer website, it's going to be extremely limited. But if you can create global applications that users are going to want, what they're trying to say is you don't need to be in the valley. You can make it work here.
Real quick, also, I'm surprised it hasn't come up today at all, but there's also the notion of like pivoting on whatever it is you're doing. LittleThings did not start out as LittleThings. It started out as a blog for a company that sold pet food. Obviously, it's not related at all, and that started out as more or less a way for that company to, get users to come in and say like, oh, okay, I'm going to go buy some pet food. This is great. But then the realization was, oh, the content that we're posting that's, uplifting and engaging and sort of happy, people like that. So the company, pivoted and says, let's concentrate on that completely, nothing else. And that was pretty much how LittleThings came about.
Good evening. The question probably that I have is, have you given a thought on the give back of course, you're successful, and we do appreciate the knowledge that you're sharing with us, but you're part of this new society. And what you're giving back in terms of to the society or to the humanity.
I got one for that, actually.
Okay.
So at LittleThings, obviously our content is sort of, uplifting content. We recently ran an article, I want to say it was about 2 weeks ago, about, it was a particular guy who was, he had moved to Denver, I think, from New York. He got there and he had a job lined up and he had lodging lined up, and when he got there it all fell through. So we had published a story, and then in accordance with that there was I believe a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe or something page started by somebody to raise money for that guy. In the span of, I think it was a day, our users has managed to kick in something like $53,000 to this guy. So it wasn't necessarily coming from us directly, but it's coming from our users, and we're trying to get the message out there to help, help funnel things back into the people that need help.
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of the social publishing space, that you can mix your business with helping people. One of the first viral novel stories that ever went viral, I just happened upon this girl. She was, I don't know how old she was, probably like 20. She posted this huge, all these pictures on Imager, which is like a free uploading site, about her brother, who is a special needs kid, and how her father was essentially abusing him. And I just kind of like found this randomly. I was like, this is obviously terrible. And much like his story, I posted that, it went crazy viral, and like there were like petitions signed. It ended up, I think it was in Oklahoma, and ended up like being pushed all the way to like a law changing over what this father was doing. He wasn't abusing him like physically, it was just neglect and things like that. So that's nice, but your question may have been more about us personally. And I definitely donate. Admittedly, probably not enough. This is still kind of new to me, just in the last couple of years. But I have actually have a side business that is pet oriented and animals and stuff. And I know it's not people, but like I would love to create like an animal rescue in the United States and things like that. So absolutely, we need to do a lot more, because that stuff matters way more than business in the end.
It's a great question, and anyone who's lucky enough to be successful, giving back is an important part of it. Involved in lots of charities. One of the things I started was raising money for public schools for grades 1 to 6 to buy drama, art, athletic equipment, everything else. And so far we've raised over $2.5 million for public schools across Canada. But my father died this past summer, and some of the people here were at the memorial. And despite all of the success he had in business, he was remembered more for the community work he did, for founding Canadian Macedonian Place, which was a seniors home for Macedonians in the Toronto area, for an Alzheimer's clinic, for ProAction, and then what Mike Z and I are doing here today for Macedonia 2025. I'm doing this all as a legacy to my babas and my dados, and I love being involved.
Any more questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming out and listening to our panel and listening to these amazing entrepreneurs here. I hope you guys enjoyed the day here at the Macedonian Economic Summit, and hopefully we'll all see each other at the gala this evening.